In the farthest corner of the world, where rolling hills melted into soft, shadowed valleys, there lay a lake unlike any other. Travelers who stumbled upon it often described it as if the land itself had taken a deep breath and paused, leaving a pocket of serenity untouched by the noise of the world. The water stretched wide and calm, its surface so perfectly still that it mirrored the sky above in flawless clarity. The line between sky and earth blurred, creating the illusion that one could walk across the heavens simply by stepping onto the water. It was not a lake that demanded attention, but one that quietly invited it, calling forth curiosity in those who approached with patience. The shores were lined with willows whose long, delicate branches draped down like green curtains, brushing the surface of the water and sending faint ripples across its glassy mirror. Their leaves whispered to the wind, soft, sibilant murmurs that carried the weight of untold stories. Standing close enough, one could almost feel the pulse of centuries embedded in those whispers, a rhythm that matched the slow, calming beat of the traveler's own heart. Nearby reeds swayed gently, casting long shadows that stretched over the water like fingers reaching for dreams. Small flowers, fragile and luminescent in the dusk, released subtle scents of honey, moss, and rain-damp earth, weaving a perfume that seemed to enter the lungs and settle deep in the chest, soothing and gentle, coaxing a rare sense of stillness. Legends of the Whispering Lake were as old as the hills themselves, murmured in hushed tones by villagers who rarely ventured near its shores. They spoke of it as a place outside ordinary time, where the boundaries of reality softened and memory intertwined with imagination. Some claimed that the lake could reveal long-forgotten dreams, reflections of desires buried beneath years of life, while others insisted that it displayed not dreams alone, but the deepest truths of the soul. Travelers who returned spoke of experiences that lingered long after the world had pulled them back into its familiar routines. They told of ghostly lights hovering above the surface at night, shadows that moved with the rhythm of one's heartbeat, and faint whispers that seemed to carry messages in a language that felt known yet unspoken. The lake's waters were neither icy nor warm. They simply existed in perfect equilibrium, welcoming the weary without demanding effort or bravery. It was a place that had seen countless souls pass through, yet never aged, never diminished, always ready to reflect the hearts of those who stood at its edge. Some nights the water would glow faintly, as if lit by hidden moons beneath its surface, casting an ethereal silver light on the surrounding trees. Other nights the lake seemed to absorb every trace of light and sound, becoming a mirror of infinite black, so deep that the sky above appeared only a suggestion. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the world in molten hues of gold and crimson, a lone traveler approached the lake. He had journeyed far, guided by winding paths that seemed at once familiar and strange. His feet were weary, yet his spirit carried a quiet anticipation, a sensation that something awaited him just beyond the visible. As he crested the final hill, the lake unfolded before his eyes, more magnificent than he had imagined. The water shimmered with the last rays of the sun, reflecting not only the sky, but flickering shapes beneath its surface, ghostly outlines that seemed to hint at forgotten places, faces half-remembered, moments of joy and sorrow, suspended in liquid stillness. He moved closer, stepping over smooth stones and soft moss, each step accompanied by the subtle crunch of fallen leaves and the gentle sigh of the wind. The willow branches reached down, almost touching his shoulders, brushing against his cloak, and he paused to listen. The whispers carried with them a peculiar cadence like words from a dream half remembered, weaving comfort and intrigue in equal measure. He sank to a low stone at the water's edge, feeling its cool, smooth surface beneath him, and took a slow, steadying breath. The air was heavy with the scent of night and flowers, a calm that seemed to settle into every corner of his being. As darkness deepened, the first stars began to appear, timid points of light in the vast indigo sky. Their reflections multiplied across the lake's surface, so precise that it seemed one could fall into the water and drift among them, walking between worlds. The traveler watched as the subtle movements of the wind caused gentle ripples to spread across the reflections, merging sky and lake in a dance of light and shadow. With each ripple, faint images emerged, scenes that were neither entirely real nor entirely imagined, faces of strangers, landscapes from distant memories, flashes of laughter and sorrow, all intertwined and layered, as if the lake held the dreams of countless souls at once, waiting for a witness to notice. And then, without warning, small lights began to hover above the water. They were delicate shimmering points that glowed softly, dancing in intricate patterns like tiny stars in a private constellation. As he watched, the traveler felt a strange connection, as if each light responded to his presence, brightening when hope stirred within him, dimming with the brush of doubt or sadness. He realized, with a gentle thrill, that the lake's magic was subtle yet profound. It did not command, it suggested, it guided, offering glimpses of wonder to those who were willing to see. Around him, the forest settled into its nocturnal rhythm. Insects began their delicate chorus, rustling leaves whispered across the glade, and distant creatures moved silently through shadowed undergrowth. Yet none of it disturbed the lake. The water remained still, absorbing every sound, every scent, every fleeting motion, transforming them into reflections that seemed to hum with meaning. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the hush of night envelop him. Feeling the cool breeze brushing his cheeks, the gentle rhythm of his heartbeat merging with the subtle pulse of the lake. He felt time stretch, becoming elastic, suspended in a perfect, gentle equilibrium where nothing demanded haste and everything could be noticed, savored, and remembered. In that quiet liminal space, the traveler became aware of a soft tug at the edge of his consciousness. It was not a call, not a command, but an invitation, an urging to release the rigidity of waking life, to allow the lake to reflect not only the world around him, but the hidden depths of his own thoughts and emotions. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the water's surface began to shimmer with a faint, ethereal glow. Shadows and light danced in tandem, and the images beneath the ripples seemed to stir with a life of their own, hinting at the dreams that had yet to rise from memory into the waking mind. For hours he sat by the water, immersed in the gentle symphony of whispers, reflections, and light. Each breath, each heartbeat, became a note in the quiet orchestration of night, a lullaby crafted not by hands, but by the very essence of the lake itself. He did not yet know the visions that awaited him, the dreams that would drift to the surface, or the lessons whispered silently into the soul of the watcher. But he felt, with a certainty that required no words, that he had arrived at a place that would guide him patiently, tenderly, through a world where dreams and reality were not separate, but interwoven in the stillness of night. The whispering lake waited. It always had. It always would. And for those who approached with open hearts and quiet minds, it promised a night unlike any other, a gentle passage into the realm where dreams awaken, and sleep becomes a journey of wonder. The sun had long surrendered to the horizon, leaving the sky a tapestry of deep indigos and muted purples, where the first timid stars began to shimmer. The traveler remained by the edge of the whispering lake, his senses attuned to the subtle changes in the air. Shadows lengthened across the water as the willow's drooping branches swayed gently, brushing against the glassy surface with delicate whispers. The lake's reflection deepened in tone, as though the fading light of day had seeped into its very depths, carrying with it a quiet promise that the night held wonders yet unseen. A soft breeze stirred, carrying the scent of wet earth, moss, and night-blooming flowers. The traveler closed his eyes, inhaling slowly, feeling the world around him dissolve into the hush of night. Each sound, the gentle rustle of leaves, the far-off cry of an owl, the subtle lapping of water against the shore, merged into a melody of tranquility. It was a music without instruments, composed by the forest itself, and it seemed to echo not only in his ears, but in the very pulse of his heart. He allowed himself to sink into it, to become one with the rhythm of the night, letting his worries, fatigue, and the remnants of the day's thoughts float away, leaving only calm awareness. The first nightfall at the lake was unlike any darkness he had ever known. It was not oppressive, nor was it cold or empty. Rather, it was a gentle, enveloping presence, a soft cloak that seemed to embrace the traveler and hold him in a tender equilibrium. It was in this delicate darkness that he first noticed the subtle shimmer on the water's surface, faint glimmers that moved in patterns too intricate to be random. He leaned closer, curiosity tinged with awe, and noticed that the lake began to respond to his presence. The surface rippled slightly, and the light seemed to bend, reflecting not only the stars above, but hints of shapes and movements beneath, ghostly impressions of something almost remembered. As the night deepened, small luminous forms began to rise from the water. They hovered above the surface like fragile lanterns, swaying gently as if caught in an invisible current. Each emitted a soft glow, delicate and warm, illuminating the traveler's face with subtle, ever-shifting hues. These lights seemed to move with intention, circling him slowly, pausing briefly as though seeking recognition. He realized that they were not ordinary phenomena, but something far older and wiser, entities attuned to the lake and the thoughts of those who approached its shores. A sense of quiet reverence settled over him. He understood instinctively that this was a moment meant for observation, for gentle awareness, not interference. The lights were subtle guides, encouraging him to notice the smallest details, the tiny ripples spreading across the water, the way the willow branches swayed with a rhythm that matched the soft hum of night insects, the occasional flicker of a distant animal in the forest, silent yet aware of his presence. Everything seemed alive, yet nothing intruded. It was a world balanced on the delicate edge between reality and dream. The traveler began to notice that the reflections in the water were not merely of the sky and stars, but hints of distant places and moments, like fragments of stories half remembered. A fleeting glimpse of a child laughing, a shadowy path through a forest, the outline of a familiar hand. Each appeared briefly, dissolving again into the dark glass of the lake. It was as though the water had memory, holding echoes of countless lives and experiences, revealing them only to those patient enough to wait and attentive enough to see. As the first hours of night passed, a gentle mist began to rise from the lake, curling and swirling above the water's surface. It caught the light of the floating lanterns, refracting it into soft beams that stretched across the shore. The traveler watched in quiet wonder as the mist shifted, forming shapes that were both fluid and deliberate, suggesting forms of creatures, faces, and landscapes. The effect was hypnotic, drawing his focus into a calm contemplation where the boundary between self and surroundings blurred. He felt neither fear nor confusion, only a sense of belonging, as though he had been guided to this place not by accident, but by a force patient and caring. Gradually, the traveler noticed subtle movements along the edges of the forest surrounding the lake. Shadows shifted and elongated, not with malice, but with grace, as if the night itself was breathing. Tiny eyes, reflective and watchful, peered from the undergrowth. Gentle rustles suggested creatures stirring, yet they remained distant, unobtrusive. The lake seemed to absorb these motions into itself, integrating them into the symphony of night without disturbing the perfect stillness of the water. He became aware, too, of sounds previously unnoticed: the faint croak of a frog, the soft patter of an unseen bird landing in the branches above, the whisper of wind as it threaded through every leaf. Each sound seemed purposeful, contributing to a larger rhythm that pulsed through the lake, the forest, and himself. Time itself felt slower, stretched, more fluid, as if measured not in minutes, but in breaths, heartbeats, and the gentle rise and fall of the mist over the water. Then, amid the quiet, he perceived something extraordinary. Within the reflective depths of the lake, faint images began to take form, more defined than before. Shapes resembling distant lands, faces half familiar yet impossible to place, and fleeting scenes of joy, sorrow, and longing shimmered across the surface. The traveler felt a gentle tug at the edge of his awareness, a nudge inviting him to lean closer, to pay attention, and to open his heart to the unfolding visions. He did not yet understand what he saw, but he sensed that the lake would reveal its secrets gradually, and that patience was required to perceive the full depth of its magic. Hours passed in this gentle observation. The traveler's mind became a mirror to the lake itself, receptive, quiet, and attentive. The floating lights, the mist, the subtle whispers, and the reflections worked together, creating an immersive tapestry of wonder. He felt as if he were at the threshold of a world both familiar and unknown, where dreams began to rise into consciousness, and where the ordinary rules of reality softened in the presence of something ancient, enduring, and benevolent. As the first nightfall deepened, the traveler realized that he was no longer merely a visitor at the lake. He had become a participant in its quiet symphony, a witness to its gentle revelations. The whispering lake was alive in a way beyond explanation. It was a guardian of dreams, a keeper of memories, and a patient companion to all who approached with openness and calm. That first nightfall marked the beginning of his journey into the lake's mysteries, a journey that promised quiet discoveries, profound reflections, and a sense of peace that transcended ordinary understanding. The night stretched on, infinite and serene, with the traveler seated at the water's edge, the floating lights hovering, the mist curling, and the lake reflecting not only the stars, but the hidden truths within his own heart. He did not yet know what dreams awaited him, nor what lessons the lake would unfold, but he understood something fundamental. The journey had begun, and he was ready to follow where the lake would lead. The night deepened, wrapping the world in velvety darkness, yet the whispering lake remained luminous in its own subtle, enigmatic way. The floating lights shimmered with gentle intensity, drifting lazily above the water's surface, casting soft reflections that quivered with every ripple. The mist had thickened slightly, curling and unfurling like delicate ribbons, and the traveler watched as it transformed the lake into a landscape of moving shadows and ephemeral shapes. Every detail, the sway of the willows, the tremble of the reeds, the tiny flicker of insects, seemed to coalesce into a living tapestry, a quiet prelude to the wonders about to unfold. The traveler's eyes, adjusted now to the gentle glow and darkness, began to perceive movements beneath the water's surface that were impossible to ignore. At first, they were fleeting glimpses, shadows that shifted like smoke, hints of light that refracted in impossible angles, reflections that suggested forms just beyond comprehension. He leaned closer, holding his breath, afraid that too sudden a motion might shatter the fragile enchantment. The surface of the lake seemed to respond, rippling gently, and as if acknowledging his presence, it began to reveal shapes with more clarity. They were images of dreams, half-formed, hovering between reality and memory. A small child laughing as she ran across a meadow bathed in golden sunlight, though no sun shone in the night. A lonely figure standing beneath a tree whose leaves glimmered like silver. A vast hall filled with light and shadows dancing together in a silent rhythm. The traveler felt a soft thrill of recognition, though he knew he had never seen these things before. They were not memories of his own life, and yet they stirred something deep within him, like echoes of emotions long forgotten, dreams never dreamed, or desires unspoken. The reflections changed slowly, as if the lake were breathing them into being, allowing each image to linger just long enough for the observer to feel its weight. Some were tender, warm, and comforting. Others carried a strange melancholy, a soft ache that reminded him of moments he could not name. Each ripple of the water transformed one vision into another, blending colors, forms, and emotions seamlessly. The effect was hypnotic, drawing the traveler deeper into a state of quiet awareness where distinctions between self and reflection began to dissolve. A sudden flicker caught his attention, a scene brighter than the rest. A golden light shimmered just beneath the water, revealing a figure kneeling on a small wooden pier that seemed to exist simultaneously in another time, another place. The figure raised a hand, and the traveler felt a strange sense of invitation, not through words, but through the subtle motion of energy that radiated from the image. He realized that the lake was not merely reflecting dreams. It was communicating, guiding him gently, showing him fragments of lives and experiences that intersected with something profound within himself. The floating lights above responded as well, brightening with subtle pulses, moving in elegant measured arcs. Their glow touched the mist, causing it to shimmer with colors that defied ordinary description. Soft lavenders that hinted at nostalgia, gentle blues that promised peace, and faint golds that whispered of hope. The traveler closed his eyes briefly, letting the sensations wash over him, feeling a warmth that was neither physical nor emotional alone, but a fusion of both. The lake had begun its teaching, slowly revealing the interplay between perception, memory, and the quiet magic of dreaming. He opened his eyes again to see the water alive with motion. Scenes flickered across its surface, a sailboat drifting across an endless sea under a sky of emerald light, a field of flowers where petals floated upward like glowing motes of dust, a staircase winding impossibly into the night sky where figures ascended and disappeared into clouds. He understood, without needing explanation, that each of these images carried a story, a fragment of a dream belonging to someone somewhere, or perhaps to no one at all. They were timeless, unclaimed, waiting to be witnessed and remembered. The traveler began to notice subtle patterns in the reflections, the way certain images lingered longer, repeating themselves like motifs in a symphony. A laughing child might appear again, next to the golden figure on the pier. A silver-leaved tree might shimmer in tandem with a distant mountain reflected far across the water. The lake did not force him to understand, but encouraged him to observe, to feel, to immerse fully in the gentle current of wonder. He sensed that these visions were alive, evolving with his attention, responding not just to his gaze, but to the quiet state of his mind. Occasionally, a faint ripple disturbed the scene, and with it, a whisper would drift through the night air, soft, unintelligible at first, but resonant, like a language half remembered in dreams. It stirred feelings of longing, of joy, of curiosity, and a delicate courage to continue watching, to continue trusting in the lake's quiet guidance. The traveler leaned back slightly, letting the cool mist brush his face, realizing that he was no longer merely observing these reflections. He had become part of the flow, a participant in the rhythm of the lake, a witness to the interplay of light, water, and dream. Hours passed in a gentle, unmeasured cadence. The sky darkened further, but the lake remained luminous with its own internal glow. The reflections became more intricate, more personal in their resonance, as if the lake had begun to learn him, to shape the images according to the quiet desires and unspoken thoughts hidden deep within his heart. The floating lights above moved in more elaborate patterns, casting gentle, shifting shadows across the mist and the traveler's face, guiding him through the silent symphony of the night. The first nightfall had already transformed into something more than mere darkness. It had become a threshold, the moment where ordinary life faded and a deeper reality began to seep through the edges of perception. The traveler understood instinctively that the lake had begun to teach him the first lesson, that dreams and reflections were not merely illusions, but mirrors of the soul, portals into the hidden landscapes of longing, memory, and imagination. As the first hints of dawn remained far beyond the horizon, he stayed at the water's edge, fully immersed in the lake's quiet magic. Each ripple, each light, each whisper was a note in a composition that seemed endless yet intimate. He felt an unfamiliar peace, a certainty that the lake would continue to reveal its wonders patiently, slowly, in its own time. And with that thought, he allowed himself to surrender further, letting the lake guide him deeper into its luminous, reflective world where dreams were beginning to stir, waiting to rise fully into the night. The lake had transformed completely as night deepened, its surface alive with shimmering lights, gentle ripples, and fleeting reflections of dreams half formed. The traveler had settled into a quiet rhythm, feeling as though he were part of a delicate, unseen orchestra where every sound, the rustle of leaves, the lapping of water, the faint sigh of the breeze, was a note in a symphony composed by the night itself. But it was then, in the midst of this serene immersion, that he sensed a presence unlike any he had felt before. At first, it was subtle, a slight disturbance in the pattern of floating lights, a soft shadow that moved just beyond the mist. Then, more definitively, shapes began to coalesce above the water, glowing faintly, almost translucently, as if formed from the very essence of moonlight. They hovered with deliberate grace, their movements fluid, silent, yet unmistakably aware. The traveler felt neither fear nor surprise, only a deep curiosity, as if some part of him had been expecting this encounter from the moment he first glimpsed the lake. These were the guardians of the whispering lake, ethereal beings entrusted with the subtle stewardship of dreams and reflections. Each had a form unique and elegant. Some resembled delicate, floating humanoids with wings of soft light. Others took shapes reminiscent of the trees and animals of the surrounding forest, yet imbued with a luminous, otherworldly essence. Their eyes, when they regarded him, were not intrusive, but deeply knowing, conveying understanding and gentle inquiry. They did not speak aloud, yet their presence communicated volumes, conveying warmth, calm, and an invitation to trust. One of the guardians drifted closer, its form resembling a tall figure cloaked in light, with elongated, flowing limbs that seemed to ripple like water itself. It inclined slightly toward the traveler, and he felt a subtle pressure in his mind, a thought that was not his own, yet seemed to arise naturally, asking him to observe, to respect, and to listen. The other guardians circled slowly, their glow reflecting upon the lake in mesmerizing patterns, casting ever-shifting mosaics of light across the mist and water. The traveler realized that these beings were both observers and guides, silent stewards who ensured that the lake's delicate magic was neither disrupted nor misunderstood. He reached out a tentative hand toward the nearest guardian, and though his fingers met only the faintest resistance of air, a warmth spread through him, not physical, but emotional, a resonance that felt like acceptance. The guardian's presence was not commanding but suggestive. They did not control the visions or the reflections, nor did they dictate what the traveler might perceive. Instead, they facilitated, gently encouraging him to engage with the lake's wonders at his own pace. As he watched, one guardian traced a delicate arc above the water, and the floating lights responded, drifting in synchronized arcs that created patterns across the lake's surface. Within the glow, the traveler began to perceive subtle shifts in the reflections beneath the water. Shapes became clearer, colors deepened, and the glimpses of distant dreams took on a more coherent form. A small village appeared, bathed in twilight, with figures moving softly through narrow lanes. A vast meadow stretched into misty mountains, where a lone child ran, laughing as petals of silver flowers floated around her. The guardians had not created these images. They simply guided their emergence, ensuring the traveler could witness them fully, without fear or confusion. Time seemed to bend in the presence of the guardians. Minutes and hours lost their meaning as he watched visions unfold, each one more intricate and layered than the last. One guardian hovered close to his side, a glowing form that resembled a small winged creature with eyes like molten gold. It moved in gentle circles, sending subtle ripples across the water, each ripple shaping the reflections, as if it were fine-tuning the images for the traveler's understanding. Another guardian traced patterns in the mist, leaving trails of silvery light that intertwined with the floating lights above, creating a delicate web of illumination across the lake. The traveler noticed that these guardians responded not only to his attention, but to his emotional state. When he felt wonder, the lights brightened. When a twinge of fear or doubt touched him, a guardian would draw near, casting a soft aura of reassurance. He realized that the lake itself was alive in a way deeper than mere reflection. It was sentient, not in the way of humans, but in a quiet, patient intelligence, mediated through these luminous stewards. The guardians were its voice, its gentle caretakers, ensuring that each visitor experienced the lake's magic safely and profoundly. For hours, he observed and interacted subtly with these beings. He mirrored their movements, letting his attention follow the arcs of light, the swirls of mist, the rhythmic pulses of reflection. Occasionally, he dared to speak aloud, and though no words were returned, he felt their presence respond in kind. A slight increase in the shimmer of a light, a ripple in the water that transformed the image beneath, a delicate brush of warmth against his mind. It was a dialogue of perception and feeling, a silent conversation that transcended ordinary speech. As the night deepened further, the lake's surface became a living canvas. Dreams and memories from countless souls seemed to float upward, taking form just beneath the ripples. A figure resembling the traveler himself appeared, walking along a misty path lined with trees he had never seen yet somehow recognized. He reached toward it, and a guardian drifted beside him, a gentle presence that suggested both caution and encouragement. It was an unspoken lesson. The reflections were not meant to be grasped or controlled, only observed and understood with openness. By the time the first hints of pre-dawn touched the horizon, the traveler had come to feel a profound connection with the guardians. They had introduced themselves not through words, but through presence, movement, and gentle guidance. He understood that his journey with the lake had entered a new phase, one where dreams and reflections would begin to interact more directly, where visions would become more vivid, more personal, and where the lessons embedded in the lake's quiet magic would gradually reveal themselves. The guardians, serene and luminous, hovered near the edge of the water one last time, their forms casting intricate patterns of light across the mist and rippling surface. The traveler felt a sense of gratitude and anticipation, a readiness to follow where the lake would lead, trusting the silent wisdom of these ethereal beings. As they receded into the night, blending with the mist and the soft glow of the floating lights, he knew the journey had only just begun, and that the lake held far more than mere reflections. It held a pathway into dreams themselves. The first meeting was over, but the guardian's presence lingered in every ripple, every shimmer of light, every whisper of the night air. They were patient, eternal, and unwavering, and he was ready to follow, step by step, deeper into the luminous mysteries of the whispering lake. As the night wore on, the lake seemed to grow in depth, not merely in its waters, but in the very essence of its being. The floating lights above shimmered with a softer, more intimate glow, casting gentle hues of silver and lavender across the mist that drifted slowly over the surface. The traveler, seated at the water's edge, felt an unusual weightlessness, a sensation as if the world had dissolved around him, leaving only the lake, its guardians, and the quiet hum of the night. Every ripple, every shift of light seemed deliberate, purposeful, as though the lake itself were aware of his presence and eager to reveal a hidden layer of its secrets. He leaned closer, eyes fixed on the mirrored surface, and for the first time he noticed the reflections were no longer fleeting or fragmented. They had become intricate, vivid, and emotionally resonant. The lake had become a deep mirror, a threshold into the soul, where the images it displayed were not random, but chosen, meaningful, and deeply personal. He saw scenes from places he had never visited, yet they carried a strange familiarity, hints of emotions, sensations, and memories that seemed both foreign and intimately known. A sunlit field stretched into the horizon, where figures moved gracefully, laughing and reaching toward one another in gestures of hope and longing. He recognized the subtle ache of yearning in their movements, a reflection of desires unspoken in his own heart. The guardians moved closer, circling him in silent, elegant patterns. They did not direct the visions, nor did they alter the reflections. Instead, they guided the traveler's awareness, encouraging him to witness the images fully, to feel the emotions contained within them, and to allow the lake's lessons to unfold naturally. One guardian hovered low, its luminescent form bending to meet the traveler's gaze, and he felt a gentle warmth that seemed to seep into his very being. The lake's magic was no longer external. It had become a dialogue between his own consciousness and the mirrored dreams that rose to the surface. A particularly striking vision emerged, A room filled with countless doors, each one slightly ajar, glowing faintly from within. Behind each door were fragments of lives and choices, moments of joy, regret, and quiet contentment. The traveler felt a tug in his chest, an urge to peer behind each threshold to understand what lay hidden. Yet he also sensed the wisdom in patience. The guardian's presence reassured him, reminding him gently that understanding would come in time, that each vision had its own pace, and that the lake's magic was a gradual unfolding rather than a sudden revelation. The reflections shifted subtly, and he found himself staring into a vision that mirrored his own form. The figure on the water's surface moved with him, though not in perfect synchronization. It acted as a guide, moving slightly ahead, beckoning him to follow. The lake seemed to invite exploration, not just of its mirrored scenes, but of his own inner landscape, of the emotions and dreams he had carried silently for years. Every heartbeat, every breath aligned with the ebb and flow of the water, as if he had become part of the lake itself, a willing participant in the unfolding dance of light, shadow, and reflection. Subtle sounds emerged from the night, soft and deliberate, the distant rustle of reeds, the faint croak of frogs, the gentle splash of fish breaking the surface. Yet all these noises blended seamlessly into the larger rhythm of the lake, forming a symphony that resonated with the depth of his soul. The floating lights responded to this harmony, shifting and swirling, creating intricate patterns that guided his gaze toward particular reflections, encouraging him to notice, to feel, and to understand without interference or judgment. A sudden ripple disturbed a particularly striking vision, a child running through a silver meadow, chasing lights that danced just out of reach. The child's laughter echoed softly, though the sound seemed to come from the water itself rather than the air. The traveler felt a surge of recognition, as though the image carried a fragment of his own forgotten dreams. The guardian nearest him floated closer, its glow intensifying, and he sensed a quiet reassurance. He was allowed to witness, allowed to feel, but not yet meant to intervene. The lake was teaching the subtle art of observation, the gentle lesson of trust in the unfolding of one's own subconscious. Hours passed, unnoticed. Time seemed suspended, folded into the rhythm of water and light. Every reflection, every ripple, every flutter of the guardian's forms carried significance, a whisper of meaning that resonated in his chest and mind. He realized that the lake was revealing not just images, but the emotional truths behind them, the hopes and fears, the longings and regrets, the quiet aspirations of countless unseen souls. In this deep mirror, he could see the interconnectedness of all things, his own life, the lives reflected, and the timeless dance of dreams and reality that the lake nurtured patiently. As dawn remained a distant promise beyond the horizon, the traveler found himself profoundly changed. The deep mirror had begun its work. It had allowed him to see beyond the surface, to recognize the subtleties of emotion and thought embedded in every reflection. The guardians hovered nearby, their presence constant and comforting, and he understood that they would continue to guide him, not through words or commands, but through gentle encouragement and silent, patient observation. The first true visions of the lake had been revealed, and the traveler felt both humility and wonder. He had entered the realm of the whispering lake as a mere observer, yet he was slowly becoming a participant in its quiet magic. Each dream, each reflection, each soft ripple of light carried lessons, not explicit, but deeply felt, teaching him to witness, to trust, and to surrender to the slow, patient unfolding of the night's mysteries. And so, As the lake continued to shimmer and breathe beneath the hovering guardians, he leaned closer to the water, letting his heart and mind open fully to the visions that had begun to rise. The deep mirror was awake, and in its luminous depths lay the first true revelations of the Whispering Lake, awaiting the traveler's attentive gaze and patient spirit. As the hours of night stretched onward, the Whispering Lake began to change subtly. Its waters, once glassy and smooth, now rippled with a deeper rhythm, a gentle undulation that seemed almost alive, breathing in tandem with the night itself. The floating lights above had multiplied, casting soft, intricate patterns across the mist that clung low over the surface. The guardians hovered patiently, their luminous forms tracing arcs and spirals, guiding the traveler's gaze, ensuring he remained attentive yet unafraid. Each movement they made was deliberate, gentle, a silent instruction in observation, patience, and reverence. It was then that he noticed something new. A narrow path appearing along the water's edge, illuminated faintly by the guardian's glow. The path was subtle, almost ethereal, winding like a ribbon of silver through the mist. It seemed to beckon him forward, promising discoveries both strange and intimate. The traveler felt a pull in his chest, a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. The lake had never offered a tangible direction before. It had merely reflected, guided, and whispered. Now it was inviting him to follow, to step beyond the familiar shores and venture into a realm where the unseen became visible, where memories and forgotten dreams awaited to be acknowledged. As he walked along the path, the mist thickened, curling around his ankles like soft, cool silk. Each step produced no sound. The ground itself seemed to yield, absorbing every footfall into the quiet symphony of the night. Shapes began to form in the mist ahead, fleeting impressions of forgotten places, doors half open to rooms no one remembered, staircases ascending into shadows, and narrow bridges stretching across waters that reflected stars not yet born. The traveler sensed that each form carried a story, a dream left behind by some soul long past, suspended in the lake's eternal memory, waiting for recognition. The guardians moved alongside him, not in front, not behind, but to either side, their soft glow blending with the mist, casting delicate light on the pathway and the ephemeral forms emerging around him. One guardian extended a luminous limb, almost like a tendril of light, tracing an outline in the air that shimmered into the shape of a familiar landscape, a quiet meadow, golden in its perpetual twilight, with a small wooden swing moving gently in the breeze. The traveler stopped, recognizing the faint ache of nostalgia, though he had never visited this place in his waking life. The lake had brought forth a forgotten dream, a fragment of desire or memory that lay dormant, waiting for his attentive gaze. As he continued, the path twisted and turned, leading him deeper into the mist, where the reflections beneath the water became more intricate, more emotionally resonant. Faces appeared, some smiling, some sorrowful, some indistinct, like memories on the verge of clarity. He felt a tug of empathy, a shared understanding that transcended words. These were not his own dreams alone. They were echoes of countless souls, suspended in a state of liminality between presence and absence. He realized that the lake did not distinguish between visitor and dreamer, between observer and participant. Every experience was interconnected, a delicate weave of consciousness and imagination stretching across time and space. A gentle ripple passed beneath his feet as he stepped onto a small stone pier that seemed to materialize from the mist itself. The surface of the lake beneath glowed faintly, revealing visions more vivid than before. A room filled with clocks, their hands moving in impossible patterns, appeared briefly, each ticking to a rhythm that seemed both chaotic and harmonious. Another vision showed a forest where the trees were composed of light rather than wood, their branches reaching toward the stars, leaves flickering with colors unseen in the waking world. The traveler felt an exhilaration unlike any other, a mixture of wonder, awe, and the quiet thrill of discovery. The guardians guided him through these visions with delicate gestures. One traced the outline of a forgotten staircase, leading him to a floating platform where an image of a child playing with a small, glowing lantern awaited. The lantern's light reflected in the water, producing ripples that spread across the lake, intertwining with other reflections, merging separate dreams into a cohesive tapestry. The traveler understood intuitively that these were not merely passive visions. They were interactive, responsive to his attention, his empathy, his willingness to engage with them. Time became a fluid concept, stretched and reshaped by the rhythm of the lake. Minutes and hours lost meaning as he wandered along the path of forgotten dreams. Every step brought new visions, a vast library where books floated gently in midair, their pages turning with invisible hands, a field where flowers bloomed in perpetual motion, each petal shimmering with memories of laughter, tears, and quiet longing, a mountain where figures climbed in slow motion, reaching toward clouds that shimmered with the soft glow of distant stars. Each vision carried emotion, memory, and meaning, demanding not analysis, but immersion, not control, but attentive presence. The traveler felt the subtle pulse of the guardians guiding him, their soft light and silent movements a constant reassurance. They had not spoken, yet their presence conveyed profound lessons: the importance of patience, the value of observation, and the quiet strength of empathy. They reminded him that the lake was not merely a mirror of dreams, but a living repository of consciousness, a delicate ecosystem where emotion, memory, and imagination coexisted in harmony. Occasionally, he paused, overwhelmed by the intensity of the visions, yet the guardians were always near, their forms a comforting presence, their movements creating patterns of light that eased the mind and focused attention. A faint hum seemed to rise from the lake itself, resonating in his chest, aligning with his heartbeat, drawing him further into the intricate weave of dreams. Every ripple, every flicker of light, every curling mist formed a language without words, a narrative woven through sensation, emotion, and quiet understanding. As he followed the path deeper, he encountered dreams that were more intimate, more personal. A small garden tended by hands he could almost recognize, a candlelit room where laughter echoed faintly, a silent beach where waves lapped against a shore lined with footprints not his own yet strangely familiar. Each scene stirred long-forgotten emotions within him, feelings of longing, joy, regret, and hope that had lain dormant, unacknowledged, waiting for the attentive heart to recognize them. The path of forgotten dreams continued endlessly, twisting and spiraling through the mist and light, inviting him to wander, observe, and participate. The traveler realized with a quiet sense of awe that the lake's magic was patient, eternal, and infinitely subtle. It did not demand understanding, nor did it reveal all at once. Instead, it offered glimpses, layers, and fragments, teaching him the art of gentle attention, the patience to witness, and the openness to engage with both his own dreams and the dreams of countless unseen souls. By the time the horizon hinted at the faintest glow of dawn, the traveler had walked far along the path, his mind and heart expanded by the delicate revelations of the lake. The guardians remained beside him, silent, patient, luminous, their presence a reminder that the journey was ongoing. The lake had shown him that forgotten dreams were not lost. They were waiting, quietly, patiently, for someone to see, to feel, and to honor them. And as the mist curled around his feet and the lights above shimmered like constellations reflected in water, the traveler understood that the Whispering Lake was not just a place of observation, but a teacher, a guide, and a companion through the infinite landscapes of memory, emotion, and imagination. The path of forgotten dreams had begun, and with each step he was learning to move with patience, wonder, and an openness to the quiet magic that awaited him in the night. As the night stretched on, the lake seemed to breathe with a rhythm all its own, a subtle cadence that pulsed through the air, the mist, and even the traveler's heartbeat. The floating lights above moved in slow, deliberate arcs, weaving luminous trails across the water and casting delicate shadows on the swirling fog. The guardians hovered beside him, their soft glow blending seamlessly with the ambient light, guiding his gaze without words, inviting him to notice the smallest details, the faintest shifts, and the whispers of the night. It was then that he became aware of the symphony, not a symphony in the ordinary sense with instruments and melody, but a layered, intricate orchestra, composed of every element of the lake and its surroundings. The rustle of willow branches became strings, their whispers rising and falling in delicate harmonics. The lapping of water against the shore served as percussion, rhythmic and subtle, echoing in perfect synchrony with his own heartbeat. The distant cry of nocturnal birds and the soft hum of insects blended as woodwinds, creating a tapestry of sound that felt at once familiar and otherworldly. Every note, every rhythm, every pause was alive, responsive, and profoundly interconnected with the essence of the lake itself. The traveler closed his eyes and allowed the sounds to wash over him, feeling them resonate deep within his chest and mind. The guardian's presence enhanced the effect, their luminous forms pulsating gently, each movement subtly influencing the cadence of the nocturnal symphony. Light and sound intertwined seamlessly, forming a multi-sensory experience where reflections, mist, and melodies merged into a single, flowing entity. He realized that the lake's music was not simply background, it was a living force, guiding perception, shaping dreams, and reflecting the emotional landscape of every soul it touched. Beneath the surface, the reflections responded to the orchestration. The visions of forgotten dreams shifted subtly, synchronized with the lake's rhythm. A child chasing glowing motes of light danced more fluidly across the silver meadows. A figure ascending a staircase of floating lanterns seemed to move in harmony with the rising cadence of wind and water. Even the floating lights above adjusted their paths, tracing elegant arcs that matched the harmonics of the unseen melody, creating a visual accompaniment that enhanced the emotional resonance of the lake's music. The traveler felt a profound sense of participation. He was no longer merely observing. He was part of the orchestration. Every breath he took, every blink of his eyes, every subtle movement of his body influenced the flow of sound and light. The guardians, ever patient, responded to his presence, guiding him gently, ensuring that his engagement deepened without overwhelming him. It was as if the lake recognized his consciousness as a necessary instrument, a bridge between the infinite possibilities of dreams and the tangible awareness of a living observer. A particularly striking movement caught his attention. A ripple spreading from the center of the lake, carrying with it a cascade of reflections that seemed more vivid than before. He saw a vast hall filled with floating candles, each one flickering in perfect synchronization with the invisible orchestra. Figures moved silently among the lights, reaching out and interacting with objects that shimmered and shifted with a spectral grace. The traveler's heart swelled as he observed. There was a sense of connection, of subtle dialogue between the reflections and the music, a conversation beyond language, beyond sight, and even beyond thought. The guardians circled him more closely, their forms tracing arcs that mirrored the movement of water and the flow of light. One hovered near, extending a tendril of luminescence toward a ripple, which then spiraled outward, causing distant reflections to shift, merge, or dissolve. He realized that the lake's orchestra was interactive in a profound way. Each visual, each auditory, each tactile sensation formed a delicate network of feedback, inviting him to move, to breathe, and to participate with awareness and intention. The lake was alive not only in itself, but in the consciousness of those willing to engage fully with its mysteries. Time seemed to stretch infinitely. Moments flowed into one another without clear beginning or end, and yet the traveler felt grounded, fully aware of the subtle passage of hours. He noticed the stars reflected in the water shimmered in rhythmic pulsations, aligning with the cadence of the floating lights, the guardian's movements, and the gentle orchestration of sound. The entire environment, air, water, light, sound, had merged into a cohesive entity, a living ecosystem of magic, memory, and dreams. Every detail, from the faint flicker of mist curling over the water to the soft echo of wings moving through night air, contributed to the symphony, creating a hypnotic immersion that transcended ordinary perception. Within this immersive experience, the traveler began to notice new reflections emerging, ones more intimate, more emotionally resonant. He saw fleeting moments of his own life reshaped and interwoven with the lake's magic, a memory of childhood laughter blended with the image of a long-forgotten garden, a moment of quiet sorrow harmonized with the silver light of a misty shore, a sense of longing for something unseen mirrored in the glow of floating lanterns. The orchestra guided these reflections, synchronizing movement, color, and sound to maximize emotional resonance, as if the lake understood the subtle intricacies of the heart and mind. The floating lights above began to move in more complex patterns, weaving spirals, loops, and intersecting paths that created temporary bridges of illumination across the mist. The traveler reached out, feeling the faint hum of energy brushing his fingertips, not solid, but perceptible, a tactile resonance in harmony with the music. He understood that the orchestra was not merely a spectacle to behold, but a medium through which he could feel, understand, and engage with the deep currents of emotion, memory, and imagination flowing through the lake. Hours passed in this meditative, immersive state. The traveler became aware of his own heartbeat syncing with the subtle rhythm of the lake, a pulse that resonated through the air, water, and mist. He felt a profound connection not only to the reflections before him, but to the guardians, to the lake itself, and to the countless unseen souls whose dreams and memories had contributed to this night-long symphony. Each movement, each ripple, each flicker of light became a note in a vast living composition, and he, consciously and willingly, had become an instrument within it. As dawn approached, its faint light brushing the horizon with muted golds and purples, the symphony began to soften. The guardians moved to the edges of the lake, their glow dimming subtly, though their presence remained a comforting, steady reassurance. The floating lights slowed their arcs, the ripples subsided, and the reflections beneath the water became quieter, more contemplative. The traveler felt a gentle sense of completion, a quiet satisfaction that the night had shared with him the lake's deepest secrets in a manner that transcended language, sight, or thought. The whispering lake had revealed its night orchestra, a living, breathing symphony of reflection, light, and emotion. The traveler understood that this night, like all nights by the lake, was not merely an experience to witness, but a profound lesson in patience, perception, and participation. Every ripple, every sound, every shimmer of light carried meaning, waiting for attentive hearts to recognize, feel, and honor it. And as the horizon slowly brightened, hinting at the coming day, he knew that this journey, through reflections, dreams, and orchestral magic, was far from over, and that the lake's patient, luminous guardians would continue to guide him deeper into the mysteries that awaited. The night had grown dense and profound, a living cloak draping itself across the whispering lake. The traveler felt a deep stillness settle within him, an intimate quiet that allowed him to perceive subtle movements and whispers previously unnoticed. The guardians hovered nearby, their luminescent forms casting gentle arcs of light upon the water, reflecting like silent sentinels over a world suspended between memory and dream. The lake itself seemed to hum softly, a resonance felt more than heard, vibrating through the traveler's chest and limbs with a soothing cadence that encouraged patience, reflection, and surrender. As he leaned closer to the water's edge, he noticed faint, shimmering outlines beneath the surface, images that moved differently from the dreams and visions he had witnessed before. These were echoes, fragments of the past, lingering memories of lives long concluded, of moments once vivid, but now almost forgotten. A gentle ripple spread from the center of the lake, and the reflections began to coalesce into scenes from his own life, long buried and half remembered. At first, they were vague, the dim glow of a childhood room, the scent of wet earth from a long-ago rain, the fleeting laughter of someone whose face he could not place. The guardians moved closer, hovering in deliberate protective arcs. Their presence was comforting, affirming that the lake would not overwhelm him with the weight of memory, but would reveal each echo gently, patiently, in harmony with his readiness to observe. One guardian extended a tendril of soft luminescence, tracing the outline of a scene beneath the water, a small hand reaching toward a candle, a fragment of warmth and security remembered from infancy. The traveler felt a pang of recognition, a mixture of nostalgia and subtle longing, and realized that the lake was offering him a rare gift, the chance to revisit, witness, and honor fragments of his own past long buried beneath the currents of daily life. The reflections deepened, becoming more vivid and emotionally charged. He saw himself running through fields drenched in golden sunlight, laughter echoing against distant hills. Then came quieter, subtler moments, the soft brush of a parent's hand on his shoulder, a fleeting glance exchanged with a friend whose face had faded over time, the comforting rhythm of a lullaby that had once cradled him to sleep. Each image was rendered in exquisite detail, yet with the gentle glow and ephemeral quality unique to the lake. He understood instinctively that these echoes were both personal and universal, fragments of a life's experiences, woven into the lake's eternal memory, waiting for recognition and acknowledgement. A sudden movement beneath the water drew his attention, a staircase appearing, spiraling upward from the lake's depths, each step glowing faintly. On the first step, he saw a vision of himself as a child, standing alone in a quiet forest, uncertain but curious. The next step revealed a moment of first triumph, a memory of discovery, of joy, of possibility. As he followed the ascent of the staircase with his gaze, he realized that each level was not merely a chronological memory, but an emotional milestone, a representation of his inner growth, fears, and desires. The lake had transformed memory into a living, breathing landscape, one that required presence, attention, and empathy to navigate. The guardians guided him along this staircase of memory with subtle movements. One hovered near, tracing arcs of light in the mist that reflected the contours of each memory, emphasizing key details, softening shadows, and highlighting moments of significance. Another guardian moved just above the water, casting luminous trails that intersected with reflections, creating a dance of light and shadow that made each scene feel alive, interactive, and deeply intimate. The traveler realized that the lake was teaching him not merely to remember, but to feel, to honor, and to integrate the echoes of the past into the present awareness of his consciousness. Hours passed in this state of gentle exploration. The lake's surface mirrored his innermost emotions. Joy manifested as golden glimmers along the ripples. Sorrow shimmered as soft, pale hues. Moments of fear or uncertainty appeared as faint, twisting shadows that dissolved under the guardian's reassuring light. He reached out, almost unconsciously, toward a vision of a long-lost friend and felt a warmth brush his fingertips, a resonance that was not solid, yet tangible, emotional, and deeply moving. The lake was teaching him the interconnectedness of memory, emotion, and perception, showing that the past was not static, but a living force that could shape understanding, empathy, and wisdom. The reflections shifted again, revealing more abstract echoes. He saw fleeting images of choices he had once pondered but never acted upon, a path not taken, a conversation left unsaid, a moment of courage postponed. These visions were accompanied by subtle shifts in the lake's music, the rustle of leaves, the soft lapping of water, the low hum of unseen insects, all forming a delicate symphony that resonated with the emotional tenor of each memory. The traveler understood that the lake was not punishing or judging. It was presenting the past as a canvas, a teacher, a companion through which he could engage with his own life with gentleness, clarity, and awareness. As the night deepened further, he noticed a convergence of echoes, memories that had seemed isolated now intertwined, forming intricate patterns across the lake's surface. Childhood scenes overlapped with visions of recent days, distant places merged with familiar spaces, and long-forgotten dreams intertwined with vivid aspirations. The effect was mesmerizing, sometimes overwhelming, yet profoundly beautiful. He felt as if he were floating within his own consciousness, guided by the lake's patient hand and the guardian's luminous forms, navigating the intricate web of past experiences, reflections, and emotions with increasing clarity and grace. The guardian's influence was subtle yet unmistakable. They did not dictate which memories would appear or how he would feel. Instead, they shaped the environment, ensuring that each echo emerged in a manner that was comprehensible, meaningful, and emotionally sustainable. One guardian hovered near, its form undulating like liquid silver, and the traveler felt a quiet reassurance radiate from it, a message that he was safe, supported, and guided, even as he confronted memories that were bittersweet, complex, or unresolved. By the pre-dawn hours, the lake had become a living mosaic of the traveler's past, each reflection layered with the depth of experience and emotion. He realized that the Whispering Lake was not merely a repository of forgotten dreams or echoes. It was an active, conscious teacher, guiding him to understand the subtleties of memory, the resilience of the human heart, and the quiet power of attentive observation. Each ripple, each shimmer of light, each interaction with a guardian was a lesson in perception, empathy, and integration. The traveler lingered at the edge of the lake, absorbing the final reflections before the horizon hinted at the first light of day. The guardians remained nearby, luminous, patient, and serene, their presence a quiet affirmation that the journey was ongoing, that memory, dreams, and reflection were not merely to be observed, but embraced, understood, and honored. The echoes of the past had been revealed not as burdens, but as guides, companions, and teachers along the path of the Whispering Lake. And as he breathed deeply, watching the mist curl around the guardians' forms and the shimmering lights dance across the water, he understood that this night, like all nights by the lake, was an initiation, a delicate, patient unfolding into the profound mysteries of memory, dreams, and the luminous interplay between them. The lake had whispered its secrets, and he had listened, heart open, ready to follow where the waters, the reflections, and the guardians would lead him next. As the night gradually approached its final hours, the Whispering Lake transformed once again. The ripples of the water grew longer, softer, and deeper, carrying a gentle rhythm that seemed to emanate from the lake's very soul. The floating lights above multiplied and shifted into delicate streams of luminescence, creating arcs and paths that reflected endlessly upon the mist-laden surface. The traveler noticed a new phenomenon emerging. From the farthest reaches of the lake, a ribbon of water stretched outward, flowing slowly but purposefully. It shimmered differently than the rest of the lake, a river within the lake itself, a subtle current that pulsed with possibility, carrying visions of futures not yet lived. The guardians moved alongside this new formation, their luminous bodies tracing patterns above the surface, their movements deliberate yet fluid, almost like the motions of conductors guiding an unseen orchestra. One of the guardians hovered closer to the traveler, a soft, reassuring warmth radiating from its form. Though silent, its presence conveyed encouragement, suggesting that this was a threshold, a point where he could engage not only with the echoes of the past, but with the myriad possibilities of what might come. The traveler stepped onto a small floating platform that had risen from the water, responding to his attention. As he moved forward, he noticed that the river's surface reflected countless potential futures. Each ripple, each shimmer, each flicker of light contained a possible path, a choice unmade, an action deferred, a dream pursued or abandoned. At first, the images were subtle, hints of moments yet to arrive, faces he had yet to meet, opportunities that might present themselves. But as he allowed himself to focus, the reflections became clearer, more vivid, more intricate. He saw himself walking unfamiliar streets bathed in unfamiliar light, encountering people whose faces seemed at once strange and vaguely known, experiencing events both joyous and sorrowful. The guardians guided his gaze, drawing his attention to specific streams within the river, highlighting certain possibilities with gentle arcs of luminous energy. A figure appeared, kneeling in a sunlit garden, tending to flowers that shimmered with unreal colors. A child ran along a silver beach, laughter echoing in a way that resonated through the water and mist. The traveler felt the subtle pull of empathy, hope, and curiosity as each vision unfolded. The river was not merely showing him potential outcomes, it was inviting him to engage emotionally, to feel the consequences of choices not yet made, and to recognize the profound interconnection between intention and experience. He realized that this river was different from the reflections of the past. The echoes of yesterday had been static, though living, memories rendered visible. This river flowed, adaptive, interactive, responsive to his awareness and attention. When he lingered on a particular vision, it deepened, extending into adjacent streams, revealing consequences, ripple effects, and interactions with other possibilities. He could sense subtle threads connecting moments across time. An action in one branch might influence the outcome of another, the path of one choice entwined delicately with the currents of countless others. The guardians remained near, their presence constant but unobtrusive. One extended a faint, glowing limb toward a shimmering ripple, and the traveler felt a gentle nudge, a subtle suggestion to follow that thread, to explore its unfolding consequences. The water beneath him responded instantly, rippling outward, altering nearby reflections, merging possibilities that seemed initially separate. He understood instinctively that the lake, guided by the guardians, was teaching him a profound lesson. The future is neither fixed nor random, but a dynamic interplay of choice, perception, and awareness. As he followed the river's winding path, the traveler noticed that each vision carried not only images, but emotions, subtle yet powerful. In one, he felt the thrill of discovery as he walked into a sunlit city square he had never known. In another, the quiet ache of regret brushed against his heart, a moment where hesitation might prevent a desired outcome. Every reflection, every potential, carried a resonance, an emotional undertone, a whisper from the lake that urged careful attention, presence, and reflection. The guardians moved in harmony with these waves, their arcs of light emphasizing connections, smoothing turbulence, and illuminating subtle intersections between paths. Hours passed, or perhaps only moments. The distinction had lost meaning. Time seemed folded into the gentle current of the river, stretching and compressing according to the traveler's attention. Each possibility invited contemplation, a door not yet opened, a conversation not yet spoken, a risk not yet taken. And yet, he noticed, the river was patient. No vision forced itself upon him. Each unfolded at a pace attuned to his focus, a quiet reminder that potential is never coerced, only observed, acknowledged, and embraced with mindful attention. A particularly vivid sequence emerged. He saw himself standing at a forked path in a misty forest, one trail bathed in golden sunlight, the other shrouded in soft, indigo shadow. Figures from the lake's reflections moved along each path, mirroring potential actions, each bearing outcomes both joyous and challenging. The traveler recognized the interplay of choice. Neither path was wholly right or wrong, yet each shaped not only the immediate journey, but the larger mosaic of experience. The river pulsed gently, ripples reflecting the consequences of action, of inaction, of courage, and of hesitation. The guardians guided him closer, their soft forms rippling like liquid light along the edges of the river. They emphasized subtleties in the reflections, the faint tremor of a ripple here, the delicate shimmer of color there, ensuring that he perceived the interconnectedness of all outcomes. Every interaction became a lesson in awareness, how attention shapes perception, how intention influences experience, how empathy and understanding can illuminate even the most uncertain possibilities. The traveler's heart and mind opened wider with each step, attuned to the subtle harmonies of cause and effect, potential and choice, reflection and consequence. The river of possibilities carried him deeper into the lake's magic. Scenes grew more intricate. Branching paths merged and diverged, futures collided and intertwined, creating a dynamic tapestry of experience. Each ripple of water, each pulse of light, each movement of a guardian subtly altered the flow, demonstrating the fluidity of potential and the power of mindful attention. The traveler understood that the lake was offering him more than visions. It was offering insight, perspective, and the wisdom to approach life's choices with awareness, patience, and care. As the pre-dawn light began to touch the horizon, soft gold filtering through the mist, the river's pace slowed and the reflection softened, settling into delicate, shimmering traces of possibility. The guardians hovered near, their presence a calm, reassuring constant. The traveler felt a deep sense of completion, a profound awareness that the river was not an endpoint, but a guide, a living, patient map of choice and consequence, an invitation to explore, reflect, and participate fully in the unfolding journey of life. The whispering lake, through its luminous guardians and flowing currents of potential, had revealed the profound truth that the future is a living tapestry, shaped by attention, intention, and the gentle acknowledgement of possibilities. The traveler breathed deeply, absorbing the lessons of the night, feeling a quiet readiness to continue, to follow wherever the lake's magic, reflections, and guardians would lead next. As the night approached its final breath, a subtle transformation began across the whispering lake. The mist that had lingered for hours started to rise, curling delicately above the surface like smoke in slow motion, revealing glimpses of waters that now shimmered with an almost tangible luminescence. Every ripple, every reflection, every floating light seemed to hum with a quiet, profound energy, as if the lake itself were preparing for an awakening, a culmination of the hours spent in the intimate dialogue of observation, reflection, and interaction. The traveler stood at the edge, heart open, senses alert, fully aware that this was the moment when the lake's full magic would reveal itself. The guardians moved in harmonious arcs above the water, their luminous forms pulsating in synchronized rhythms that resonated with the subtle currents beneath. Their movements were more intricate than ever, weaving patterns of light that reflected not only upon the surface but deep into the heart of the mist, illuminating echoes of memory, dreams, and possibilities with gentle clarity. One guardian hovered closer, its glow radiating warmth that seemed to seep into the traveler's consciousness, inviting him to prepare for the culmination of the journey, a profound awakening that encompassed past, present, and potential future simultaneously. Beneath the water, reflections began to shift in dynamic ways. The scenes of the past, once isolated echoes, now merged with visions of possible futures, intertwining like strands of luminous silk. Childhood memories connected seamlessly with long-forgotten dreams and untaken paths. Moments of joy flowed into moments of regret, and every emotional nuance was amplified by the lake's subtle orchestration of light, shadow, and ripple. The traveler realized that this integration was not accidental. The lake, through its guardians, was teaching him a singular, profound truth, that all experiences, memories, dreams, and potentialities are threads in a single living tapestry, and only through recognition and awareness could one begin to see the full pattern. The night orchestra, which had accompanied him through the hours, now rose in intensity. The subtle harmonics of wind, water, and light expanded into a full symphony, each note corresponding to a reflection, a ripple, a thread of consciousness intertwined with the traveler's own presence. He felt himself simultaneously participant and observer, his breath, gaze, and subtle movements weaving seamlessly into the living music of the lake. The guardians traced arcs above him, creating luminous bridges between reflections, connecting past memories with possible futures, dreams with echoes, and consciousness with the eternal rhythm of the lake. A particularly striking scene emerged. A vast, silvered mirror floated upon the water, reflecting not the traveler himself as he appeared, but his essence, an ethereal amalgamation of all his memories, dreams, choices, fears, and hopes. As he approached, the surface rippled in response to his gaze, revealing deeper layers, fragments of understanding, moments of clarity, and subtle insights that had previously remained hidden. He saw how decisions, both made and deferred, had shaped the course of his life, and how the lake's guidance had allowed him to perceive connections invisible in ordinary perception. The guardians moved closer, their glow intensifying as if to affirm his readiness to witness and absorb these profound truths. Time itself seemed to dissolve. The traveler no longer distinguished between minutes, hours, or even the division of night and day. All was present, the deep echoes of the past, the vivid shimmer of the present, and the infinite threads of possible futures. The lake's waters glowed like liquid starlight, every ripple carrying meaning, every reflection a teacher. The traveler sensed the lake's consciousness reaching out, a gentle yet insistent awareness that invited him to merge his own perception with the eternal flow of memory, emotion, and potential. He felt a profound serenity, a quiet exhilaration, and an intimate connection to the subtle magic that had been building through every step of the journey. Then, gradually, the awakening intensified. The mist lifted entirely, revealing the lake in full radiance. The waters reflected the sky above, not just in color, but in the depth of infinite possibility, shimmering as though the stars themselves had descended to dance upon its surface. The guardians formed a luminous circle around the traveler, their forms intertwining with the reflections, weaving light into the water and creating a lattice of energy that pulsed rhythmically like the heartbeat of the lake itself. The floating lights aligned with the currents, spiraling gently, orchestrating a final crescendo of illumination and harmony. The traveler felt a surge of understanding sweep through him. The lake's awakening was both literal and symbolic. It represented the culmination of awareness, the integration of experience, and the embrace of all that had been encountered. The past, with its echoes and lessons, the present, with its immersive clarity, and the future, with its infinite interwoven possibilities. Every ripple, every gleam of light, every movement of the guardians contributed to this profound revelation. The lake was no longer merely a passive mirror or an observer. It was alive in the truest sense, conscious, responsive, and intimately connected to those willing to engage with it fully. He stepped onto the central platform, which had risen from the water in response to the crescendo of energy. The surface beneath him reflected not only his form, but also the luminous threads of every memory, dream, and possibility he had witnessed. The guardians moved closer, forming a protective and celebratory arc around him, their glow blending seamlessly with the radiant waters. The traveler extended his hands over the reflections, feeling the subtle resonance of energy, light, and emotion ripple through him. He realized that the lake was teaching him to embody awareness, to integrate all experiences into a conscious understanding, and to recognize the beauty and interconnectedness of existence itself. Slowly, as the first light of dawn began to warm the horizon, the lake's surface began to settle, the glowing currents softening into gentle ripples that reflected a calm, infinite clarity. The guardians, now shimmering with a tranquil intensity, hovered around the traveler one final time, their presence a silent affirmation of completion, understanding, and grace. The river of possibilities, the echoes of the past, the night orchestra, all had converged into a unified awareness, leaving the traveler profoundly changed, attuned to the subtle rhythms of life, memory, and dream. As he stepped back onto the familiar shore, the whispering lake seemed to exhale, a quiet sigh that resonated with satisfaction, serenity, and timelessness. The guardians remained nearby, luminous and patient, but now their arcs and movements were relaxed, harmonious with the natural rhythm of day approaching. The traveler understood with a quiet certainty that he had experienced more than visions. He had witnessed the awakening of consciousness itself, the lake's patient guidance through the intricate dance of reflection, possibility, and integration.